This episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast is brought to you by 2006 Duke grad Dave Olverson. Dave recently moved from New York City back to Durham and instantly fell in love with the food, entertainment, and the community. He encourages Duke grads to look at Durham as a place to live. You will love it. Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode 98, 90 freaking 8 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are coming to you on an early Thursday morning, December 21st, and I am the host this week. I am Donald Wine. I am not in DC. I am at my parents' house in Texas for the holidays, and I hope that my other two co-hosts had a great Hanukkah, which has just recently ended. First off, in Denver, we have Sam Klein. Sam, how are you doing?
Good morning. I let you guys know that I was having some strange vision problems this morning, but they are clearing up slowly. So I should be good to go today.
I'm hoping that your vision problems were just chalked up to the fact that it is very, very early for you and I over here, not on the East Coast.
Yes, that it is somewhat early, but we're gonna get through it. I don't really know what was going on, so I think I'll be fine.
Well, good. And we also have in Atlanta, Georgia, Jason Evans. Jason, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm a first-time caller here. No, I'm kidding. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I just had a comment.
Yes.
No, I have no other comment.
What? No, you have to follow that up. What's your comment?
It's got to be stupid, though.
Did you want to ask us something clever?
I've got nothing. It's like that whole thing came really quickly. I got nothing.
Well, we were prepared for you. I just don't think you were prepared for the question part. But we'll get you prepared. We're going to set you up right now. Let's start with the good thing. Evansville. We took on Evansville Purple Aces last night. Duke basketball took on a team that was ranked 159th in KenPom, and it was their first game since the loss to Boston College. But after an 11-day absence, Duke got back on track, a 104-40 victory. Jason, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to start with this question. Holding a team to 40 points is an incredible feat, no matter who the opponent is or what team you are. But are you considering our defensive issues cured, or are you still in wait-and-see mode?
I mean, you'd be crazy to say you're in anything but wait-and-see mode. You have to be, because one game doesn't prove anything. That said, and I should add, one of my themes is going to be this team plays really, really well at home. Duke, we shoot unbelievably better at home than we do on the road or in a neutral environment. And I think we probably play better defense at home. You're just more comfortable when you know the floor, when you know the sight lines and everything like that. So I want to be cautious about reading too much into this absolute destruction of the Evansville Purple Aces, who, even though, as you point out, they're like 150 or so in Ken Pomeroy's rankings, they're not that bad a team. They were 10-2 coming into this game. And they're the kind of team that in their conference, will be competing for an NCAA bid. Not to say that they'd be a lock or anything like that, but Evansville is a decent club and in the Missouri Valley, and Duke absolutely manhandled them. And you asked about the defense, and that is definitely the place to start, because that's been the big concern. Coming out of the Boston College game, we talked, you guys, I went back all those years to look at Duke giving up 3-pointers and how we were giving up 3-pointers this year at an almost unprecedented rate. And if you had asked me before the Evansville game what my biggest concern would be, it would be 3-pointers, because Evansville, coming into this game, was one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. I think I saw someplace they may have even been number 1 in the country in 3-point percentage. They are a team that likes to shoot from deep and is very, very good at it. Duke extended their defense, and you haven't seen Duke play deny man-to-man like this in a couple years. Coach K has been backing off a little bit on the man-to-man, because when you play deny like this, you have to be able to give really good help defense. And with young teams, it is tough to do that kind of thing. You're so worried about denying your man, you don't realize that someone else was denying their guy, and their guy got the ball and he moved past him, and suddenly, you're in a situation where someone's getting a layup, or they're making a pass and the guy's getting an easy dunk. And Duke has backed off this kind of defense in recent years, but against Evansville, I mean, in the first half, did you guys see how much Duke was playing deny man to man? It was, it is a demanding thing to put on young players, and Duke played great at it. We forced 21 turnovers. That's a ton of turnovers. We had 13 steals. We blocked 9 shots. I mean, those are huge. 21 turnovers, 13 steals, 9 block shots. Whew. I mean, you do that, and the other team.
We had a lot of those in the first half. I think it was 14 at the end of the first half.
Yeah. And the 3-pointers, the thing to be concerned about with this Duke team, Evansville was only 5 of 14 from 3. I thought Duke did a really nice job of not giving them lots of easy 3-point looks, not letting the guys who were more dangerous from 3 get their shots off. And look, it's worth noting Evansville was missing several of their better players. That mattered. It's no denying that. Of course, if you're missing good players, it's going to impact things. But the dismantling that Duke did to them on defense was really impressive. Now, I will freely admit, I had stuff going on last night. I watched this game on tape delay, so I knew the score. One of my sons came back from college, and we sat down. We were watching the game together, and so I had a general idea of what the score was. And at one point in the first half, it was 7-7. My son didn't know anything about the game, and I said to him, "I go, man, I think Duke's about to go on about a 75-20 run." And he goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Wait, you'll see." Think about that. At one point,
Jason, that was pretty cruel of you to do that.
it was, but he was sort of saying, he's like, I can't believe we're having a tough time with these guys because it was 7-7. And I go, yeah, don't worry about it. 75-20 run coming. The way Duke shut Evansville down and at the same time executed really, really well on the offensive end. Look, this was the team that was number 1 in the nation for a long period of time. Although, Sam, I'll toss to you and let me ask this about the offense. Making all those 3-pointers at home, does it mean anything to you when we're able to do that? I mean, come on. Wendell Carter had 3 3-pointers in the season. He made 4 of 7 last night.
Yeah, I think that the offense, as good as it has been this year, is not going to look like that very often. There were a few things working in this team's favor, right? We had a lot of time off for the team to get their legs back and be refreshed. They were playing an opponent who I think we can admit was overmatched even before the injuries, and by the time the game started, Evansville only had 8 healthy players, so they didn't even really have the ability to throw different guys out and try to pressure Duke more, because that's what smaller teams are going to want to do, right? They're going to want to overplay on defense and see if they can get steals and rebounds that they wouldn't normally be able to get. That would be the formula for beating any sort of overpowering opponent, and Evansville just didn't have the personnel to do that last night. So that was working against them. And then, of course, the home crowd. Duke always plays pretty well in Cameron. They rarely lose, and certainly not to an opponent like this. They might drop a game to a good ACC team, but I don't think that overall there's a ton we can take from this, other than the fact that it's nice that they were confident coming out. They didn't look sluggish at the beginning for very long. It did take a few minutes, but by the end of the first half, they were cruising to an easy victory. And not to change the subject too much, but it's much better than what the folks down the street from Duke can say about their game against Wofford, because it looks like the Tar Heels took a loss to a pretty bad team on their home floor, which is great. But I don't think that there's a lot we can take from this. I do want to talk a little bit here and then a little bit as we look ahead to Florida State in the second ACC game about the 3-point defense, because as you mentioned, Evansville is one of the best teams, I think maybe the best team in the country in terms of 3-point percentage coming into the game. And that was probably what they wanted to do was to find those threes and take them. Duke only let them shoot, as you said, 14 threes. They only made 5 of them. I like the 3-point attempts, looking at that number. Knowing that a team that focuses on that kind of thing only took 14 shots is great, because as we'll talk a little bit in the Florida State preview, Florida State likes to take a lot of threes, and denying that is going to be a key part of the defense against the Seminoles. And it's something that Duke has not been good at so far this season. So I like to see the team focusing on chasing opponents off the 3-point line, making them uncomfortable, try to get them taking mid-range shots or throwing the ball down low, where Duke does seem to be able to defend at least a little bit with Carter and Bagley and some of the other guys. We didn't even get to see DeLaurier. Sounds like he had some kind of minor injury that is going to be cleared up by next week. So
yeah, they said tightness in his hamstrings, I think.
Yeah. And it sounded like something that he would play through if they were playing in an important game. But I think that everybody sort of knew going in that Duke would be able to win this game pretty easily, and they did. Justin Robinson was getting minutes in the first half.
I was going to say, by the way, the fact that DeLaurier was out, we found out that Duke's fourth big man, or I'm sorry, I guess fifth big man, the third big man off the bench is not Antonio Vrankovic. It is Justin Robinson.
And who Justin Robinson, who acquitted himself well. So good for him.
Yeah.
A little strange for Vrankovic only because he's a junior, right? Or is he a sophomore? And I just keep forgetting this.
No, he's a junior. He's a
junior. And it's a little disappointing that he can't carve out minutes. But it doesn't seem like he's necessarily needed. We'll see going forward. It doesn't. The big man depth, I think I was more concerned about at the beginning of the season than I am now, only because it seems like Carter has some tendency for foul trouble. Marquise Bolden certainly still does, but it's not so much for either of them that we'll get to an end game situation where both of them are fouled out and it has to be Bagley and DeLaurier and they can't guard, some really big guy like Florida State always seems to have, or some other ACC team. So I think I was a little bit concerned that the inexperience was going to catch them, but so far it hasn't really. The fouling out hasn't been a problem yet, but I want to see how that looks going forward.
Yeah, I think the one thing that when you look at the stats, I was with you. I watched a little bit of game here and there last night, and then watched it in full after knowing the score. The one thing that we always talk about, the old Duke teams would always pride themselves on shooting or making more free throws than the other team attempted, and we did that last night. We made 10 of 13, and Evansville was 5 of 6. But that's not the real stat here. The stat is that we made more 3-pointers than Evansville attempted. We were 16 for 26 while they were 5 for 14. And I think with a team that came into the game ranked very high in terms of 3-point shooting percentage, that was a really big step for me as far as the defense not forcing that many jumpers, because if you don't shoot that many, then you can't make them and you can't climb back into a game. And I think that was really a really key stat in the improvement of our perimeter defense. The one thing that I also note on turnovers, Jason mentioned that we forced 21 of them, and I think there was 14 or 15 in the first half. We had 39 points off of those turnovers, and Evansville only had 2. That's what you want to see. It's not always going to be that big a disparity, but I think you want to have turnovers. If you're going to force turnovers, you want to capitalize off of them. And we did that a lot last night. And I think that was really good.
So you talked about stats for a second, Donald. There's a stat I want to bring up. And like I said, I don't want to dwell too much on Duke's offense, because I think we play so much better at home. We shoot so much better at home than we do outside of home. But there is a stat that is just freaking unbelievable from this game. Did you guys see how many assists that Duke had?
I know that it was a big, beautiful
32.
Number.
Duke had 32 assists on 39 baskets. That's
good, right?
Crazy. That's a ridiculous 32 assists. First of all, 32 assists is ridiculous, but 32 assists on 39 baskets. It shows you how well these guys are moving the ball. It shows you that they're doing a really nice job of putting their teammates in places where they can succeed. And look, we've had other games this season, not quite like this one, but we've had other games where Duke's assist total has been really, really high. This is clearly a team that does a really nice job of moving the ball around. We see lots of good big to big passing. Marvin Bagley had 4 assists last night. But to me, the biggest thing is we are finding ways to put guys in places where they can succeed. And I just feel like the time off we've had has added to that even more. These guys are getting more and more comfortable playing together. We've talked a lot about the defense. Now we've seen it on the defensive end of the floor, but I thought on offense, our ball movement was absolutely incredible. Duval and Goldwire, our 2 point guards, combined for 15 assists and 1 turnover. I think a 15-to-1 assist turnover ratio. Yeah, I'll take that. That's not bad.
It's okay.
We haven't even mentioned Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter went for 27 points in 18 minutes.
And he made 4 3-pointers. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
He made almost as many 3-pointers as all of Evansville.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, there was a time.
I don't know what more do you want to say about him? The guy, he was all over the place, and he had the one really ferocious block.
Yes.
Early in the game that was scary.
He could have blocked it twice.
I wish I'd bothered to check it. I think there may have been a point in the second half when Wendell Carter was outscoring Evansville. I think that's possible. I wish I'd bothered to check that, because they were down in the 20s, like in the low 20s, like halfway through the second half.
Well, that the most efficient way to check that is to go back to the tape and wait for the fans to start doing the Wendell's winning cheer, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I think that may have
we used
been
to do that. We used to do that for JJ a fair amount.
Yeah. By the way, so Carter surpassed 25 points. I think that means that we now have had 4 Blue Devils pass 25 points in some game this season, which was one of our preseason prediction things. Carter, Bagley, Allen, and I think Trent did, right? Yeah. So we have, and I think 4 was my number. So no one else is getting past 4. No one else is getting past 25.
I think Duval might get there. We'll see.
I think, he's been close. He had a 22 or 23 point game. So I think my goal of, I think I put 6 or maybe I put 5. I'm not sure. We'll have to go back and check.
We can check the tape at a later date.
Okay, guys. Well, with the exception of a February 3rd game against St. John's, Duke is now done with non-conference plays. So in 10 days, on December 30th, we will reopen the ACC slate by taking on Florida State at home. Sam, you've done a little homework on the Seminoles, so tell us what can we expect from this game.
So I mentioned it when we were talking about as an Evansville. The key to this game is keeping Florida State off the 3-point line. This Florida State team is actually a little different than what we're used to in the past. I think we've seen a lot of Florida State teams in recent years that had a lot of big guys, and they were able to kind of muscle Duke around if they were going to have success. This team is much more reliant on shooting. They take 22 threes a game, and they've only lost 1 game so far this season. That was to Oklahoma State just recently. Oklahoma State limited Florida State to taking 15 3-pointers. The only other game that FSU has played that was relatively close was a road win against Rutgers that they won by 5 points. Again, Rutgers kept them to only 16 3-pointers. They don't shoot a particularly great percentage, but they do have a few guys that are really good shooters. So they're led by junior guard Terrence Mann. You guys might remember him from previous years because he's been a real player for them. He's kind of the most prominent returning player on this team. In last year, of course, they had Xavier Rattan-Mays and Dwayne Bacon and their big guy Jonathan Isaac. Those guys are all gone. They've all left early or graduated, and so Mann is kind of to pardon the expression, man is the man now for Florida State. He averages 16 points and 6 rebounds and 3 assists. So he's kind of all over the place for them. And he did have one pretty good game last year when Florida State beat Duke in Tallahassee, going for 13-7. But the key for Duke, like I said, is the 3-point shooting, shutting down Phil Kofer and Brian Angola and MJ Walker. Those are the really good 3-point shooters for Florida State. If Duke can manage to get the ball out of their hands when they get perimeter looks and force them kind of to move it inside, then Duke's going to have success against them. They are Pretty balanced team as far as the offense and defense goes. They're 45th on offense in Ken Pom and 25th on defense. So Duke is going to have to kind of be alert at both ends of the court. They're 30th overall in Ken Pom, and like I said, only one loss so far this year. So we know that Florida State every year is a well-coached team. We know that Duke sometimes has trouble with them, although this game is in Cameron, and like we said, Duke doesn't often lose in Cameron. I expect Duke to win this game. I don't think they're going to blow them out unless, check the 3-point shots. If Florida State is taking, if we get to halftime, Florida State's only taken 6 or 7 3-pointers, Duke's going to be cruising to a victory.
So the thing I'll say about Florida State, I watched them play Florida a couple weeks ago. A very, very impressive win for them. They looked really good doing it. This Florida State team is remarkably long and athletic. Other than CJ Walker's 6'1", other than CJ Walker, it felt like every other guy on the floor was like between 6'8" and 7 feet, or 6'6" and 7 feet, with arms that were like down to their ankles. And they just fly all over the floor. They do a really good job of a lot of different guys getting rebounds, and I think that they're definitely going to be a tough test for the Devils. You know, one thing, we're a little lucky. They have that giant, Chris Kumaji, who's 7'4".
They always have a giant. That's part of the deal, right? They used to have Michael Ojo. I don't think he's there anymore, though.
Right. No, he's not. But Kumaji is 7'4". I mean, that is really big. He has the dreaded lower extremity injury. He got it almost a month ago, and he was supposedly going to be out like 4 to 6 weeks at a minimum. And so I'm pretty sure he's missed like 5 or 6 games in a row. I'm pretty sure he won't be around for this game. He might come back, but it'll be good for them not to have him, because he's that kind of height, 7'4", and he's also long. Like you could be 7'4" and not long. What am I even talking about? But that kind of height.
Plumlee was like 7'1", and his wingspan was like 6'11".
Yeah, that's true. You're right. That's what they call him, the T-Rex, because he had just short arms. But anyway, I think it's good that they're going to be missing Kumaji. It's a good Florida State team. I'm not sure we know how good it is, because other than that game against Florida, and they played Oklahoma State, they beat Florida, they lost to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is good. They're not great, but they're good. Florida State just hasn't played anyone. Like, if you look at Ken Pom, Florida State's strength of schedule is 291. I mean, that's not a good strength of schedule. They've played a very easy schedule so far. They've got an impressive record. They're 10-1 against it, but they haven't tested themselves very much. And this is a big game to determine whether they're for real or a little bit of a mirage, created by playing a relatively easy early season schedule.
Although there was a lot of optimism for them coming into the season that they would be not maybe winning the conference regular season, like they were expected to be worse than, say, Duke and Virginia and North Carolina and perhaps Notre Dame. But right in that discussion, right below them, like with Miami, who now looks really strong, Florida State certainly looks like a tournament team. It remains to be seen if they're like a 3-4 seed or more like a 7-8-9 seed.
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. And I think a lot of the optimism about this team was that they were going to be exactly what they've been, a balanced team with a lot of different guys who can hurt you. If it's not man, it's Kofor. If it's not man and Kofor, it's Angola or Walker. They've got a lot of different guys who can cause problems for teams. They're deep. I mean, it feels like Florida State always is bringing guys at you in waves, and they're figuring out who's having a good game, and then that guy gets more playing time than the other guy.
And Terrence Mann is the leading minutes getter on this team, and he doesn't even average 30 minutes a game, which it stands in contrast to Duke, not only this season, but almost every year, where they have often 3 or 4 guys who average 30 minutes a game. And this year, Allen plays almost every minute. Duval plays almost every minute. Bagley, it seems, plays almost every minute. So, Florida State has a lot more dudes. They rotate off the bench to throw at you. And like you said, Jason, they always have that length, and that can be concerning for a team if they're not on top of their game offensively. I think that Duke should be able to still get their offense against Florida State, but it will be more challenging, I think, than it's been the last few games.
And the other thing I want to mention about Florida State is the game against us begins a absolute gauntlet for them. So they're 10-1 right now. They play, I think it's Southern Miss that they have. So they're probably going to be 11-1 coming into the game against us. I won't even be mildly surprised if they lose 5, 6, 7, maybe even more games in a row. Are you ready for their schedule? You want to hear the Florida State schedule starting with our game? They play at Duke. Then 3 days later, they play UNC. Then 4 days later, they play at Miami. Then 3 days after that, they play Louisville. Then 3 days after that, they play Syracuse. Then they're at BC. Then they're at Virginia Tech. There isn't an easy game. I mean, this part of this is the ACC. The ACC is tough, but Duke, UNC, Miami, Louisville, Syracuse as your first 5 ACC games. Wow. Oh, that is not going to be easy.
And Florida State fans had beef with that when the schedule first came out back in, early September. And they have good reason for it, because that is a murderous row of teams.
Yeah. Duke, UNC, and Miami, all 3 of those teams are ranked in the top 6 nationally, and they're playing 2 of the games on the road. They get to start the new year playing 2 top 10 teams on the road, and the only home game they have is UNC. It's like, wow. It could be a tough season for them. It could be really, really tough if they get off to a bad start and they get down on themselves.
This podcast is brought to you by 2006 grad Dave Olverson. Dave recently moved from New York City back to Durham and is amazed at how much there is to do around town. In addition to all the Duke sporting events, DPAC has top-rated Broadway shows, including Hamilton next year. There's great hiking, museums, community events, and a thriving downtown with great breweries, stores, and a beautiful setting. So if you have any questions about life in Durham, you can email Dave at durhamdavedbr@gmail.com. That's durhamdavedbr@gmail.com. David, thank you so much for sponsoring the DBR Podcast. Okay, a quick note. We wanted to mention that in the departure from previous years, there was a early signing period yesterday in recruiting, but we're not talking about basketball. We're talking about football. We're not going to get into the specifics of the recruiting class because there were limits to how many recruits were signed. It was a limit of 15 players per school. But we want to let you guys know that did happen yesterday for the first time. And Duke, like many of the top programs in the country, filled their recruiting class or recruiting period 15 of players. Now, in February, I believe it's on February 3rd, there is going to be the main signing day where you can sign up to 25. It will be 10 more. But I just wanted to let you know that, in previous years, and Sam can attest to this as well, signing a full class was not necessarily a given at Duke University. And I think it's great that not only were that David Cutcliffe and the staff signed 15 guys, but they did it basically immediately. I think Duke football put out a picture on Twitter of Dave Cutcliffe just kind of lounging in his office about 5 minutes after signing period had opened because we had signed all 15 guys, which I think is kind of remarkable. We'll get into specifics of the recruiting, but you guys have any thoughts on the actual day in itself and how it works?
I remain impressed that Duke keeps the drama low when it comes to the recruiting. There's a lot of stories that always come out about guys flipping their commitments late. I know that Duke has had a little bit of flipped commitment issues, but nothing like right at signing day. And the guys that they do get to commit all send in their letters like first thing in the morning, and that's all good. I'm not sure that Duke is ever going to get to a point where they're recruiting so many 5 stars that they have to get into these crazy recruiting battles with all the top schools or anything. But if they get kids and they get them to commit, then it's a good thing. And I'm hesitant to let my sports fandom tell me that someone's doing something definitely the right way, but it does seem like Coach Cutcliffe's program identifies kids who want to be there, gives them the opportunity, and makes them feel like the commitment is worth something, because Duke doesn't often have those decommitment issues. So I'm happy for that. I don't really know much about reading into like which guys we got and how good they are and where they project to be in 2-3 years when they're really getting playing time. But just from the standpoint of kind of the public relations of the whole thing, Duke seems to be doing a pretty good job on the football recruiting.
The thing I'll say about the early signing day is football to me has had a problem for college football has had a problem for a while, because there's so much of this flipping. There's, a kid makes a commit in basketball. When a kid says, I'm committed to the school, everyone else backs off and it's considered a done deal. In football, a kid says, I'm committed, and the other teams are like, yeah, we don't care. It doesn't matter. We're continuing to recruit you. It's like commitments don't even matter.
And it's especially weird because you'll see, I don't follow any of the recruits on Twitter, but I'll follow some of the writers who cover this stuff, and they'll like retweet or favorite tweets from players whose bios will be like, committed to Iowa, like Hawkeyes class of 2020 or whatever, and then they'll retweet like, just received my 16th offer from University of Michigan, and you're like, what? I thought you're going to Iowa. The whole thing is very strange to me.
Well, yeah, and these kids, using your example, the kid will be committed to Iowa, and he'll say, taking my recruiting visit to Ohio State next week, and you're like, wait, I thought you were committed to Iowa. What does this mean? I mean, in college football, there's this term soft commit, like that does a commitment doesn't mean, oh, I'm only a little bit committed. You can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit committed. To me, it doesn't make any sense. And something that's always bothered me about college football recruiting, and this early signing period has alleviated some of that. It allows kids to put their name on the dotted line in a way that can't be pulled back. So other schools then have to back off. And I think that's a really good thing for the sport of college football, because you would see kids flipping at the last minute. And if you're a school that was counting on a player, oh, we need an offensive lineman. Well, we got Billy Bob, who's going to come in and be our offensive lineman. He's committed to us. And then at the very last minute, Billy Bob changes his mind, and you don't have room to go find someone else, to find someone new, because everyone else has already committed someplace else. So I like having an early signing period. I think it's a good thing for college football. So in that regard, I'm pleased with it. And I also want to point out, Duke's class, while it's not huge, we got 15 commitments. We don't have other guys who haven't signed yet. The quality of the class is pretty good. Like if you look at recruiting rankings, most of them have Duke like as the 12th best class or so in the ACC, and you may be like 12th out of 14 schools. That's not that good. If you look at the average of our recruited kids, we're like 7th or 8th in the ACC. So what Cut did is he got 15 kids who are quality kids that he knows can contribute to the program, and he hasn't bothered to fill out the rest of the class yet with players that he's not sure will have a big impact. So it's a good class, and it continues a good trend of David Cutcliffe bringing in high quality kids who are committed to Duke and who are helping Duke succeed, and pretty soon play in yet another bowl game.
Yeah, bowl game. Hey, we're playing in a bowl game in like 5 days, guys. Why don't we talk about that for a minute? Duke football is traveling to Detroit. They're playing at Ford Field against Northern Illinois in the Quick Lane Bowl. It's going to be on December 26th, 5:15 Eastern time kickoff on, I believe, ESPN or ESPN2, one or the other. But guys, give me your quick what you want to see in other than a victory, because I think we're all in that boat. But what do you guys want to see from the Duke Blue Devils as we take on Northern Illinois in the Quick Lane Bowl? Sam, I'll start with you.
So there isn't anything specific, I think, that I'm excited for. I mean, not that, it's nice to win the bowl game. It's nice to finish with a winning record, but really what teams like Duke, who are not playing for championships at this moment, are using the bowl games for is to get better for next year. So I would like to focus on the offense. I want to talk about Daniel Jones kind of reestablishing himself. He had sort of an up and down season this year, not as good, I think, as the season that we hoped and expected he would have. So I want to see him carry the offense a little more. I don't think Northern Illinois quite has the guys to keep up with Duke. Duke is going to be favored in this game. Northern Illinois has had some injuries coming in, so I want to see Daniel Jones take more control of the offense, be able to run it and pass it the way that we saw early in the season. Because the bowl game, I think we're supposed to treat it as sort of the indicator for what's going to happen next year. And again, I don't think on the recruiting front that we got any skill players who are going to be impact guys from day one. So the skill guys who we saw this year largely are going to be the guys we see next year. And I want to see Jones perform well. And then to talk about one of Jason's favorite players, Britton Brown is going to be back next season, and he's going to be carrying the load at running back because Sean Wilson's going to graduate. And I want to see what he can do. Maybe have his role increase in the bowl game and then going forward into spring practice.
So, speaking of Sean Wilson, the Northern Illinois version of Sean Wilson, Jordan Huff, a senior running back who really carries the load for them. He rushed for 740 yards this season, even though he missed a few games because of injury. You mentioned injuries. Jordan Huff is injured for Northern Illinois, will not play in this game. So they're missing their version of Sean Wilson. That's a big deal. And, Donald, you were asking what you're looking for in this game. I'm looking for Duke's defense to really dominate. Northern Illinois is not a great offensive team, and the fact that they're going to be missing Jordan Huff means that they're missing an important part of their attack. I think Duke has succeeded mostly this year because of the quality of the defense. Northern Illinois has a good dual threat QB named Marcus Childers, but he's just a freshman, and he doesn't pass a ton. And I really think that without their best running back, this may be a game where Duke can put some pressure on their QB and where the defense should really be able to keep Northern Illinois under control. I would guess that Northern Illinois will have trouble scoring points or so against Duke. And I like our chances. If our offense plays the way it was playing at the very, very end of the season, not the middle of the season, our offense was terrible. But if it plays the way it was playing toward the end of the season, this Duke team should win this game, and Donald should have a fun time watching it.
I certainly hope so. To echo all of you guys, I think that, adding to that, one thing I do want to see is big plays, and that's on offense and defense. The reason why, when you're watching all these bowl games, I mean, half the times, people are watching all these bowl games and they don't know what game is on. They just know it's a football game. And it's not a lot of memorable moments from some of these games. I'd like us to see, other than, the offense defense, I want to see them make plays that will be talked about at the end of this college football season. The games kind of increase in importance, and a lot of people don't think these bowl games are important. Well, they are for some of these kids. And I think if they can make big plays that are, something that people talk about, they're like, oh man, Britton Brown had that 75-yard run, or, Brian Fields had that pick six. Whatever the big play is, I want to see some of those, because I want people to talk about some of these guys in the season that they did have, and leave them with a lasting impact that will carry into next season. That's obviously, in addition to winning the game, in addition to being good on both sides of the ball, I want them to have something that people go, ooh, that Britton Brown guy, he's going to be really good next year. I can't wait to see him play. Leave people something to think about for the off season and for next season. Okay, we are going to start wrapping this podcast up. We will start with Player of the Week, and I will turn to you, Jason. Who's your Player of the Week?
So I'm going to give you a Player of the Week, but then I want to talk about someone else. The Player of the Week is Wendell Carter Jr. We only played one game. He had 27 points in 18 minutes. He had 4 of 7 3-pointers. Wendell Carter, to me, was a clear player. I mean, he established the tone for Duke. Evansville said, we're going to let that guy shoot. We're not going to let the other guy shoot from the outside. Wendell Carter said, you're making a mistake. But I want to mention, we focus so much on stats and offense. My backup Player of the Week is the combination of Trevon Duvall and Jordan Goldwire. I mentioned earlier they had 15 assists, but they're my backup player of the week because I thought their perimeter defense, their ability to pressure the Evansville guards was truly, and I should add Gary Trent. I think Gary Trent also did a great job at this. Really impressive the way we pressured the Evansville guards, made them uncomfortable, kept Evansville from getting into any kind of offensive set that they were happy with. Duvall, Trent, and Goldwire combined for 8 steals. That's like a big number. So even though I named Wendell Carter my player of the week, I'm giving a special shout out, honorable mention for the defense and the defensive pressure we saw from Duvall, Goldwire, and Trent.
Sam?
I feel like I would just echo everything that Jason said. There's not a whole lot controversial about saying that Carter was the player of the week. He certainly showed out in this game, and I don't know. I don't really have much to add on top of what he said. So, ditto to Jason.
I am also going to make it 3 for 3 and go with Wendell Carter for all the reasons that you guys said. But I also want to throw in a plug for Justin Robinson because I'll tell you, I was boarding a plane last night and I was watching the game on my phone, and I looked down and I'm like, Justin Robinson is in this game and there's 8 minutes left in the first half. What happened? And it wasn't because anything bad happens, because this guy was playing some good ball. And he did again in the second half. I know it was a lot of garbage time in this game. But I want to give a shout out to him because I think that he, Justin Robinson, friend of the podcast, played really well last night in the minutes that he got. And as a result, it's weird. We might see, some of these minutes come in some really key moments. That's going to be something that we're going to need down the stretch. Someone deep on the bench who may be called upon to do some extraordinary things later on in the season. Could it be Justin Robinson? I don't know, but I think last night was a big first step for that. Shout out to him.
Are you suggesting that 2018 Justin Robinson is 2015 Grayson Allen?
Possibly.
I'm in for
only
that.
Time will tell.
I'm in for that.
I'll say this about what Justin Robinson did. It says to me that he's been playing really, really well in practice because, when you heard that Delorier wasn't going to play in this game, if you'd said to me, okay, so which big man is going to sort of move up in the rotation, I would have said, well, Vrankovic. And if you said, well, no, but if they need like more of a power forward rather a center, I would have said, I guess Jack White then. I would not have gotten to Justin Robinson, as quickly as Kay went there. And I think that's a sign that Robinson has really been playing well in practice. He has played well in games when he's gotten in, but those tend to be scrub minutes. I'm not sure Coach K is even really paying attention that much. So my bet is Robinson has been working really, really hard, and it's starting to pay off in meaningful minutes, and that's just great for him. I'm so pleased for the guy.
Now we're going to do parting shots, and Jason has a big one, so I'm going to start with Jason.
Yeah, so for my parting shot, I want to talk about Lavar Ball, and
do you want to talk about Lavar Ball?
Do you want to? Are you sure?
Those are words that I did not want to hear come out of my mouth. I want to talk about Lavar Ball. Those are 5 words.
Say that you have to talk about him and that you don't actually want to.
Yes, that might be better.
I'll give you slightly more credit for it.
Yeah. So the reason I'm going to talk about him is because he has announced that he is going to create the Junior Basketball Association, the JBA, and that it will be a basketball league for high school graduates who don't want to bother with going to college, they want to spend a year or maybe more than a year not pursuing their education, but only pursuing their basketball dreams. He says that his Big Baller brand clothing line will be able to fund all this. I'm not sure that's true, but that's what he claims.
Have you guys seen any of that stuff anywhere? I mean, it might just be that I was going to say, it might just be that I live in whitest middle America city, but I haven't seen any of it yet.
I was going to say, I don't think Big Baller brand is really big in Denver. But my bet is that LA, Chicago, and New York and Miami.
And DC, apparently.
And DC. Yes, there we go. Lavar Ball says he's going to pay players between $3,000 and $10,000 a month. and he's looking for 80 players to fill up 10 teams in this league. He claims he's going to play games at NBA arenas. So let me start by saying I think Lavar Ball is full of it. I think that 95% of what comes out of his mouth is BS and designed only to promote him and his brand and promote his kids and the such. He's a blowhard. He's a loudmouth. I don't think that this league that he's proposing is necessarily going to get off the ground. There are a lot of things that Lavar Ball says he's going to do or says are true that prove to not be true. But all of that put aside, I think he's talking about the right kind of things. And I think he's bringing up something that matters and should happen. We discussed this on the podcast a few months ago during the height of the Louisville scandal. There is a gap between what these players are worth and what they're paid, because they're paid nothing and they're worth something. And something needs to happen to fill that gap. And
does it have to be Lavar Ball, though?
No. I was going to say, I don't want it to be Lavar Ball. I think Lavar Ball is, in many ways, the exact wrong person to be doing this. But on the other hand, he's kind of the right person because he has a podium. He has a microphone. We listen. We hate him. We mock him. We think he's a jerk, but we do listen. He does get press. He does get attention. And maybe he doesn't make this work, but maybe someone else does. I think something like this would make sense. There is no reason kids should be forced to go to college if they don't want to go to college. But more than that, there's no reason kids who are worth something should be told their talents are worth nothing until their talents are suddenly worth millions of dollars. It's crazy. And everything that can happen that can remove some of the crazy and make college basketball, pro basketball, AAU, and everything else deal with the crazy is a good thing in my mind. So I'm here saying that I like what Lavar Ball said yesterday.
I'm here to say that Lavar Ball is doing something that has already been done. It's called the G League. And I think really what this is in the end is going to be an opportunity to get his sons Melo and Jello back from Lithuania and play in what would be quote unquote a more heightened atmosphere with more eyeballs. The eyeballs are there because he's there. It's not because any of the players. I mean, if you think about this from the player's perspective, you think that Lavar Ball is going to get 10 arenas, 10 NBA arenas who already own G League teams or are affiliated with G League teams to host a big baller brand league that's featuring players that did not want to go to college because they thought this was a better path to the NBA. I don't see it. I think they need to have bigger expectations, greater expectations, or rethink them at least about what this league is going to be. And especially when you talk about 80 players, 10 teams, that's 8 players per team. Teams get hurt, players get hurt, players get injured, players, have to do other things. And if we're talking about 8 players a team, that is going to really come back to bite them in the end. I think the better situation for them is the ones already laid out as of right now. There needs to be more money pumped into the G League. There needs to be more money pumped into, making that as a viable option for players who don't want to go to college for a year. Because at this point, they can already do that. They can already go to the G League out of high school. But what this may turn into is a league where players who don't want to finish high school end up in. Just like LaMelo, who has been pulled out of his high school to play professional ball. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to go ahead and say I think this will fail, but I fear this will fail. But time will only tell on that. Sam, what's your party chat?
My first thing is that I think we originally wanted in this show to have my special watching old basketball clips segment, and I don't think we have enough time to do that today. So we're going to have to put it off. I promise we're going to do it because I am excited to react to old basketball with you guys listening to me. We just didn't get a chance today.
And thank you to everyone who submitted, because we've gotten a lot of great submissions over the last few days. I've even looked at some of them. I'm like, oh yeah, this is something I need Sam to watch.
Yes. So feel free to keep sending those in. We will do that at some point, hopefully soon. But if we get too deep into, if we can't do it in the next couple of weeks, then it might have to wait till after the season. Regardless, neither of these parting shots is especially relevant. The other one is that I saw The Last Jedi and I had a lot of fun, even though it's full of inconsistencies and ridiculousness. And for those who I saw a lot of reactions to the movie that were along the lines of it was fun, but there were too many ridiculous things. Welcome to being an engineer watching a movie about space travel and space flight. because I deal with this every single time that I see one of these movies. It's not just this. This is a problem with every movie. Jason, I don't want to get you too spun up on Star Wars, but if you had any reaction or thoughts to that, please feel free to share them.
There's been this weird thing that has happened with The Last Jedi. I don't think I've ever seen a movie go through sort of this phase, different phases, I should say, of reaction to it. So initially, all the critics came out of the early screenings and were raving that it was a fabulous, amazing movie. And then the public got to see it, and there was this backlash of people who said it's anti-Star Wars, that there are a number of things. Look, I'm not going to get into it on this podcast. We're not a movie podcast, and I haven't done the exhaustive research that countless websites have, but there are websites out there that have chronicled the number of ways that The Last Jedi flies in the face of accepted ways the Star Wars universe works and acts, and ways characters act and things like that, and the way a Star Wars movie is supposed to behave. And that in many ways, Rian Johnson, the writer and director of this film, who's a brilliant, amazing writer-director, he did Looper, which, folks, if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't seen Looper, please go see Looper immediately. It's a great, great movie. And it's the success of that movie that allowed Rian Johnson to make The Last Jedi. Anyway, there are folks who say that Rian Johnson intentionally created a Star Wars movie that would subvert the traditions of what a Star Wars movie is. And so there was this backlash from diehard Star Wars fans. And now it is turned again. So critics loved it, fans hated it, and now the fans are loving it again. And it's only been a week. It's only been out for a week because everyone's like, well, the backlash is too much. And I sort of fall into that camp. When I first saw the movie, I came out of it and I said, it's a little slow in the middle. There's an entire middle section revolving around a caper on a casino planet that is completely unnecessary and makes the movie too long. And I was like, God, I don't like that happened. And so I sort of had some negative things to say about the movie, although I always started my comments by saying it's really good, but and so now I've fallen into the camp with a lot of these other folks who say, even though I have criticisms of it, it's a very, very good movie. It's an enjoyable movie. And the people who are out there saying this is unrealistic or that's unrealistic, we're talking about a film where the main characters use weapons made out of light and they move things around with their mind. Of course it's unrealistic. Don't give me that. That's just silly. That's not a legit criticism. We have to accept this in the Star Wars universe. If you want to criticize it for other reasons, that's fine. But saying that Princess Leia can't use the Force like that is just
whoa. Come on, man. Some people probably haven't seen it yet.
I saw it on Monday. And I've seen all the Star Wars, even Rogue One, all the offshoot ones. I think the one thing that this reminded me of, I thought it was great. I was one of those people that thought it was great and don't really understand a lot of the hate behind how this movie was made. But I think the one thing that it reminded me of, and this is kind of a weird analogy, it reminded me of the Matrix Revolutions, not Revolutions, Reloaded, the second Matrix, where everyone came out saying, "Oh, I hated it. I thought it was stupid." And then when Revolutions came out, it answered a lot of the questions that people had about the second one, and it made the whole trilogy kind of come together. And I think that's kind of, without getting too much into it, it leaves a lot of open plot lines, and I think that they're probably going to be answered in 9. But I think I really enjoyed the movie as the movie, and I thought it was really, really good and well put together.
Well, hold on. The only thing I'll say about what you're saying there is I'm not convinced that everything's going to be resolved. The sort of questions maybe that still linger from 8 will be resolved in 9 because there's a little bit of a one of the things I think that is a little bit of a problem for the Star Wars universe right now is that there are different chefs in the kitchen, and we have J.J. Abrams directing movies that are written by different guys, and then Rian Johnson picks up the story from J.J. and Rian writes his own version of it, and then in 9 we're going to go back to J.J. directing, and I think Rian's going to have some contributions to the story, but the story isn't going to be specifically from Rian Johnson. So you've got this situation where think of the 3 movies, the trilogy, as one book, but one guy's writing the first bunch of chapters and the next guy's writing the next bunch of chapters, then the third guy's writing the final bunch of chapters. There's going to be a disconnect. And I think that's one of the problems that they're running into right now. Not a major problem, because these films are well made and they're making unbelievable box office, but it's at least a little bit of a problem. And I think one way that Disney is going to try and get around that is they've already announced that Rian Johnson is going to make a separate trilogy, not going to be about the Skywalker family, but it'll be about something else in the Star Wars universe. And he's going to make all 3 of those films. So he will be the final voice on all 3 of them.
Yeah, I would highly recommend you see The Last Jedi if you have not yet.
You know what? I mean, if we're recommending movies, just really, really quick,
do it.
There are a couple movies that I've seen lately that are coming out in the next couple weeks that folks need to go see. The first one is Molly's Game, which is the story of Molly Bloom, who was the woman who ran a big Hollywood and then a big New York poker game. And it's written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin's one of the best one of the best writers in the world. And this is the first time he's directed a movie. Molly's Game stars Jessica Chastain and Idris Elba. Really good movie, really well acted, and an amazing story about this woman. But then the one that everyone must see, I just saw a screening of this a couple days ago. It doesn't come out till early January. Everyone go see The Post. So I'm about to tell you guys who's in The Post and who made The Post, and you'll go, oh my God, I don't need to know anything else about it. So who's the greatest female actress alive today?
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep is in The Post. Who's the greatest male actor alive today?
Denzel Washington.
Tom Hanks. Close.
I knew it was Tom Hanks. I just wanted to play with you.
That was a moment right there that you guys just had.
Tom Hanks is in The Post. Who's the most famous? Who's the most famous director in the world today? Steven Spielberg. So The Post is Steven Spielberg directing Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. I don't know that you need to know anything else aside from that, but it is an amazing, remarkable film, and it's the story of how the Washington Post's role in the Pentagon Papers scandal, which goes back to the early 1970s. And look, it's a really, really important piece of American history, but we're at a time in this country where the media is sort of under attack from certain large institutions. Let's call the president a large institution. But anyway, this film is about when Richard Nixon attacked the media. And it is a great, amazing film. It is going to get a lot of Oscar nominations. It is my pick to win Best Picture. Go see The Post. I apologize for diverting us so much onto movies from basketball, but I'm telling you folks, go see The Post.
It actually does look really good. I'm going to probably see both of them in the next couple of months. My parting shot that I'm going to do is basketball related. On Wednesday, this past Monday night, NBA TV does what's called Players Only, where it's basically the studio and the games that they call are run by former NBA players. But what they also do is a monthly show that is a conversation between 2 legendary players. And this month they did Isaiah Thomas, the Detroit Pistons one, not the one that currently sits on the bench injured for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Magic Johnson. And it talks about their relationship, their friendship through the 80s, and how what a lot of people don't realize is they had an estrangement for about 25 years. There were reports when Magic contracted the HIV virus and announced it to the world. There was rumors that were spread about Isaiah Thomas, his best friend, not taking too well to that and spreading bad information about Magic. And because of these rumors, which were proven untrue, they kind of had an estrangement for about 25 years. And really, it came out last night, or I'm sorry, on Tuesday night, this conversation that they had, an hour-long conversation. It is honestly one of the great specials that has ever been put together in sports. I think if anyone knows the history between those two guys, the friendship that they had was very well pronounced throughout the 80s and 90s. I would encourage everybody to go back and watch this special, especially at the end of the special. Magic apologizes for all the hurt that came that strained their relationship, and it's a very, very powerful moment. So I would highly recommend, two of the great players in NBA history, but also two of the great people in NBA history, talking about their friendship. And I think that is something that will, if you love the 80s, and Sam, you should definitely watch this because it talks about 80s NBA.
I'm actually potentially more excited about this than the post.
Yeah. This is absolutely something that everyone should watch. And that, I think, is going to do it for episode 98 of the DBR Podcast. Remember, you can check us out on iTunes. You can check us out on Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, and Google Play. And if you like what you're hearing, please leave us a review. It helps us in Google searches. It helps us move up the rankings a little bit and make it so more people can find us. We also appreciate you sending us comments via email. Our email is dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you guys. We've heard from a lot of you over the last couple of weeks, and we thank you for that. Also, check us out on the forums. We're all there. But for now, we're going to sign off. Happy holidays, everybody. For Sam and for Jason, this is Donald. And now it's time for the Duke Band to take us home.